That's me. I have no clue what a HYROX is. If anything, I'm more annoyed by how trendy this whole thing seems to be out of nowhere. But I'm a recovering asshole. So I brought on some of the TTT coaches who just tried their first one recently in Dallas to shed some light. Is HYROX a bleach? Coming from the CrossFit world, is this thing a joke? Will it be dead in 1 year? Do people train for this? I heard they can't judge a wall ball to save their life. But most importantly, can you do one in Crocs? Tune in as they share some of the pros and cons of HYROX. And I woke up this morning super tired, and I was like, man, I got this podcast. I got to get some energy going. So I get in my car. I'm like, I'm going to throw on some Kesha. Got to throw on some Kesha.
Okay.
Don't stop.
Well, I turn on TikTok, and I'll tell you one thing. The opening line of that song did not age well.
I don't know the opening lines of that song.
Wake up in the morning feeling like P. Diddy.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Oh, God.
So I don't think it worked, but I chugged the energy drink when I got here.
How do you think P. Diddy's feeling in the morning right now?
Feeling like shit.
Yeah. I don't think that's a good thing.
And that's already how I was feeling. So
accurate.
Kesha. She really hit home with that one.
All right, so what is a HYROX? Let's start as if because I honestly don't know much.
Recording?
Yeah,
we're on, Becky.
I'm used to the things vibrating, but right when you would talk.
Are you looking for vibrations?
I was like, nobody. It's not recording.
It's recording.
Okay.
So I've heard of it. I've heard here and there. I've asked you guys what it is. Adam's probably told me like twice, and I've forgot 100 times.
Our goal should be for Chris to walk out of this room and actually know what HYROX and that he can explain it to somebody else.
Like their
that would honestly help me a lot.
No, I feel like if we can do that, if Chris can walk out of this room and then go tell Chris K what HYROX is, we did a good job.
Well, we're already closer to that than probably someone going out and explaining what CrossFit is. It's a defined race of 8 1K runs with a station between each 1K run. And I would probably butcher the order of the HYROX, but because you guys did it, I think you guys probably know the order better. I know it starts with ski. So you do a 1K run, and then you do the ski, and you do a 1K run, then it's the sled push.
The sled push, and then you run, and then the
then
sled pull, and then you run. And
burpee.
Then you burpee, and you run.
Burpee
and then,
broad jump.
Yeah, burpee broad jumps.
And then you
row, run.
Farmer's carry.
Run.
Lunge.
Lunge, run. Wall ball. Little run to the finish.
Yeah, so HYROX is a fitness race where it's anchored by these 1K runs. So you're going to run. A total of the loops is 8K, but what ends up happening is the way that they have the arena set up is like you've got all these 8 stations that exist inside of the running loop. And so you've still got a good amount of running before you get to each station. So some of the numbers that I've seen, it's like 8.7K total running. So 60-70% of the race is actually just running around. But then you're going to run, you're going to get to your station, you're going to try and get your station done as fast as you can, and then you're right back out for the next run. And so it's interesting for me trying to get into it to basically explain it to somebody because it does look like it could be a CrossFit event. Like if this was just like a standalone it looks like it could be
that could have been a workout.
It could be the Friday event of
we've even had discussions about like, man, some of these CrossFit like competitions, they should have HYROX as like the opening event on like a Friday or Saturday where it's like the long endurance stuff that usually exists on day one. Like that would be kind of interesting and maybe like
they could
have
be a
some
sponsor
sort of,
or something.
Yeah. I don't know, have some sort of blend. I don't know how much motivation or incentive either of the parties have to actually like mix with each other, but it's like that's how I kind of think about it is like HYROX could be a CrossFit event.
For sure. And I think if HYROX were to first off, I think the motivation for HYROX to like produce the Friday event or the endurance event is very low at this point, given that they're selling out entire, they run multiple waves of the event all throughout the day. So I think in the Atlanta one that we were at, I think they said there were 6,000 participants over Saturday and Sunday.
You were in Atlanta? I thought you were
sorry,
in
the Dallas one was 6. I want to say it was 6,000 participants.
6,000.
I heard 6,000 from multiple people.
Every 10 minutes there is.
So they're there from what time to what time?
7 until probably 10.
Yeah,
right?
That was just a 1 day one, right? Dallas was 1 day.
Yeah.
6,000 people in 1 day.
They have individuals and they have partner events too. That's what Adam and I did.
And they have relay
and
now.
they have
And
relays
relay
as well. Yeah.
All right, let's backtrack. Do y'all know how long this thing's been a thing? I feel like I've heard the name HYROX, but not known what it was for.
2017, I think.
Oh,
gonna
so that's
say
longer
big
than
in
I thought.
Europe.
Yeah,
It
I think it's
started over
2017.
there.
I think it started over in Germany. Yeah, I want to say it was 2017. I think that the very first one that they did, it was like a couple hundred people, maybe 1,000 people, and it's just kind of like steadily grown from there. But just recently, it's all of a sudden just like hit a tipping point.
Yeah. Critical mass. And
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
it's,
I wish
a
I could
thing.
find the podcast because I remember years ago on this podcast I said CrossFit needs. I was thinking more Spartan race because I didn't know about HYROX. It may have been out, but I didn't know about it. But I was like, they need like a Spartan race, something they could take from town to town, set it up, run it all day, and just have all the local affiliates come by and just throw down and do a workout, and everyone compares themselves, just something like that. And this seems like it kind of fits that mold.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not CrossFit's, but
I know it's not CrossFit, and I feel like that's a lot of the flack that they take about it is the fact that it's not CrossFit, is that it's so known and it's so structured and it is cookie cutter from like race to race. And a lot of people, when they talk about it, are like, if I explain it to a CrossFitter, they're like, oh, you just do the same thing over and over. And I was like, yeah. And to me, that was kind of part of the appeal. Part of the appeal was just kind of knowing like what it was exactly that I'm training for, knowing that more or less this thing is going to be exactly the same. Like if you go venue to venue, the setup changes. Like there might be 2 run loops at this one in Dallas. There might be 3 at the one in Atlanta, just based off of what convention center that they had.
It's still the same distance.
It's the same.
covered.
That's the same. They do the best they can to sort of like normalize the distances. They do the best they can to normalize the transitions. Sometimes the stations themselves. So you've got, I want to say it's 80 meters of burpee broad jump, maybe like 200 meters of farmer carry, 100 meters of lunges, if I remember right.
Yeah.
So the distances on those stay the same, but sometimes you might be turning more often than not. Like if you do a farmer carry at a smaller venue, you might have more turns. So there's little things in there that might change, like the finish times and also just like the race course or the run course itself. But for the most part, to have this thing totally standardized, to know exactly what it is that you're doing, to be able to compare times race by race, year by year, be able to track your results, that was part of the appeal for me.
Well, I think whenever I've talked to people about HYROX, CrossFitters about HYROX, I get the same pushback, which is, it's why would you want to go do the exact same race every time? And I think they forget that part of the CrossFit methodology is for things to be like retestable, that you have benchmarks that you retest over time so that you can track your progress. And HYROX can be an endurance benchmark, that it's not like you're going to just do HYROX every single day in training and just do that hour and 15-minute race over and over and over every day in training. What you do instead is you train to improve the benchmark and then go test the benchmark, like you guys did it in November. And then we're going to do the one in Atlanta in April. So you have this long period of time where you can train and improve. And then you go do the benchmark to see, did I get better at the test? It's no different than CrossFit. You're going to do repeated tests over time. Even in the open, like we repeat particular open workouts and then people go and compare their scores from previous years. Like that's part of the methodology for CrossFit as well.
Yeah, it's really hard. I will say this, it's really hard working with CrossFitters on a yearly basis when the benchmarks are constantly changing, because it's like they don't know if they got better or not. They don't know if year by year, if their open placing was dictated by a drop or a rise in fitness, or a drop or a rise in participation, or a drop in, or like a change in the testing body. And there's so many variables that go into, did I get better year by year in CrossFit, where it can become pretty hard for us to sit down with our athletes and be like, yes, look, these are the other benchmarks that we had that existed outside of the season. You got better at your back squat, your 500 meter row, 30 muscle ups per time. Like, look at these, you got better. Oh, but I got worse in the open. Like, there's those variables in there are confounding in a way that it can be confusing for a CrossFitter to understand, or at least like get a gauge on their progress year by year. And so to have more benchmarks in there, where it might be a HYROX event where you're showing them an endurance thing, or just have that be one of the tests or an event inside of the year, I think is kind of encouraging and even maybe like reinforcing for the athlete and the coach both, to be like, look, this is your evidence that you are getting better. This is pretty damn cool over the course of like 3 to 5 years.
I think part of that comes down to the fact that with CrossFit, you measure your progress, at least as an athlete in CrossFit, you measure your progress by, did I qualify for the next stage? And that's like your only, or, what was my finish in the open, or what was my finish in quarterfinals? But like you said, because the testing body changes constantly, it's not a measurement of your progress. It's a measurement of your progress relative to other people with a changing testing body.
Yeah.
that's a really weird way to evaluate yourself relative to, did I get better this year or did I get worse? And I think with, known, tests like HYROX, things that can be used as benchmarks, you eliminate the other people variable, and you can get better relative to other people, right? But you eliminate like the variance of the test changing constantly and things like that. And you can just say, yeah, I got fitter. My run time. So this past time you guys averaged like 520 something, 524,
like 510 or 515.
Yeah. And so next time, if you guys average 505 runs, well, you got better at running.
Yeah.
And it's very easy to look at that and say that you got better. Even if your placement on the leaderboard got worse, you can say, oh, we objectively got better. We cut 3 minutes off our HYROX time.
Yeah. That's why I gravitate towards endurance sports in general, because at the end, it's just you versus past you. You just see what, like rowing, my 2K last year, my 2K this year. It's still a matter of, well, what's my placement? But all that I focus on is that previous time and how can I make it better? And that's why I liked HYROX too, is just, all right, we have all this data. We know what our splits were. We can make that better. And then we've succeeded.
I mean, there's like two different genres of music, so to speak, and I don't get why, and maybe I'm just reading this wrong, but it seems like people are at odds. Like you're either team CrossFit or team HYROX, but I'm like, you can listen to Rihanna and Beyonce. I mean, Rihanna's better
Kesha.
By every single
Not
metric,
Kesha,
period, but you can listen to them both.
Yeah, right? I think that they can coexist. I don't know if either of them have incentive from the other to coexist. Maybe they do. I know that if you just look at the timelines, like clearly HYROX sort of like rode the coattails of CrossFit in terms of like the realm of fitness racing, right? Like they sort of like got on board with that and they sort of rode it. And now it's like they're becoming their own thing. Like I think that HYROX participation in 2024 is going to outdo 2024 open signups. Like it's getting to that point where it's already better and it's probably going to keep going to this point. And I think there's a lot of really good things that HYROX does that CrossFit should be looking at and being like, we need to improve our.
That's what's the bummer to me is because I feel like they could have had their version of this.
They could have. I think there's a whole bunch of factors at play here. I think one of them is just business dynamics, because the HYROX race is this cookie cutter race and they know exactly what equipment they need. It's always the same equipment. And so their cost is essentially like the logistics of transporting.
The overhead of it.
They just transfer, they pack it up and send it to the
put
next
it on
city.
I want to call it a U-Haul, but it's not a U-Haul. They just
maybe
put
like
it on
two U-Hauls.
trailer. Yeah, two U-Hauls.
Was there pyro? Did they have pyro?
No, not yet, but I'm sure it's coming. Like I guarantee that they can afford those kind of things. When you cross the finish line, they're going to have that because they've got this kind of repeatable test where they just, like Becky said, they fold it. It's like a transformer. Fold it up, take it to the next location, and it's always the same. So you don't have to like retrain all the volunteers or.
And they kept every movement is simple, right? It's simple. Well, minus the wall ball, and I know everybody has pointed out poor judging at the wall ball, but every movement, it's the ski monitor, the sled, you go this distance, the burpees, you go this distance. Like it's all super simple stuff.
Yeah, I think the one thing that HYROX does really, really well is they clearly took a lot of time to think about the user experience. And not just user experience, the first time user experience. So when Becky and I signed up, I was intimidated because I was like CTP in terms of, I'm going to forget what station's which. I'm going to forget how many laps I'm doing. I'm not going to know where I'm going. We walked in there and we watched maybe like 5 minutes. And I was like, oh, I got it. Like if you just walk in there, if you sort of like know an overall flow, like the very first 5 minutes of this talk is like, all right, I'm going to run, I'm going to go do something. I'm going to run, I'm going to go do something. I don't know which one's which. Does the sled pull come before the sled push? Do I need a burpee over here? How many laps of the burpee do I do? When we got there and we looked at everything, we're like, got it. It makes perfect sense.
You start here and you work your way down.
And so it's like, it seems a little bit more intimidating than it really is. It seems a little bit more confusing than it really is. And then user experience also, it goes into a line with what Becky was saying in terms of the movements. Like the movements are all, the only one that you really have a judge for. You can talk about whether you need a judge or not, but the one that you have a judge for is wall balls. Everything else is, did you get it done?
Did you have a judge or a counter?
We had a cheerleader is what we had. He was probably judging a lot of people's like quarter squat wall balls, and then Becky and I got there. He's like, "You guys are awesome! I love it. Keep going."
And I do think that there's levels of races within the HYROX world, right? The one we did is basic level. I think They just had people directing traffic and they had wall ball counters. But certain races you actually can make money, and then there's world championships, and I'm pretty sure the standard of judging is a bit more rigorous and upheld. And I know that even the course structure, I think is almost exactly the same, because I've read, I think I saw an Instagram post of how they looked at one of these pro races burpee broad jump times and realized that course was too short. They compared it to every other pro race that has happened, and then they adjusted people's scores for that race, because like this is like the money maker moving on to the next one. So I think there's levels of importance within.
Wait,
the
do they
races.
have like a season type thing already?
They do. They have world championships. Every race that you do has certain spots that you could qualify for it.
You know, one of the things that I like about their movement selection versus the CrossFit movement selection is that everybody does the same amount of work. And I think that that's an important thing that gets overlooked in CrossFit events. So a good example of this is like, you know, when you get on the ski erg, you might be taller than me, but it doesn't, the height differential there doesn't matter. We're both skiing 1,000 meters. And then we go and we run 1,000 meters and we're both covering the same distance. And then we do the sled pushes. And even if I weigh more than you, you know, giving me maybe an advantage on, you know, people will talk about how like height gives you an advantage on wall ball and weight gives you an advantage on the earth. We're still pushing the sled the same distance. Then you do the burpee broad jump and it's like your height is not a disadvantage for you on a burpee broad jump in the same way that it is on a burpee over a barbell. And so it gets rid of a lot of the, like it brings the average down because everyone's covering the same distance for every movement. And I think that that's a really important, I'm not sure that they thought about that when they were constructing it, but they just gravitated towards movements that basically do a pretty good job of eliminating advantages or disadvantages for height and weight and all of those things.
If I had to guess, and I don't know for sure, but if I had to guess, when they were sitting back in 2016, 2017 and trying to picture what movements they wanted to put in, I think that they chose the lowest or barrier to entry in terms of skill. I think that was their goal, because it gets back to what I was saying before about user experience and first time user experience. I think that they were trying to remove as many obstacles as possible to get as many people sort of like interested in it and not intimidated by it, in terms of like, I can't snatch that weight. I can't do those gymnastics on the rig, but I can do those burpees. They're going to suck. They're going to be gross. Like, but I can do those burpee broad jumps. Oh man, I don't know if I can push that sled, but maybe I can go to the open division instead of the pro division and just take my time with it. That's a lot of wall balls, but it's the very last thing. If it takes me 6 minutes, it takes me 6 minutes. I can do those wall balls. So I think, and I don't know, again, I don't know for sure, but I think the overwhelming priority for them was to think about how this is going to be perceived and sort of accomplished by people who aren't professional in terms of like the fitness industry, and how can we get them involved? How can we like capture them, get them really invested, and then keep them coming back? So user experience, the other thing that goes into it, which I thought that they did super, super well, was within like 2 hours of us finishing, Becky pulled up on her phone all of our splits. Like, so you do the race with a chip timer. They've got all these little pads built out around the track in between all the stations. And all of a sudden she pulls it up. She's like, oh, look, we were in the 40th percentile on our sled push or our sled pull, which like stole my lunch money. And then
oh, you did all of it.
Yeah, but then the burpee broad jump, we were in the 90th percentile. And then we were looking at the runs. That first one was, man, that was really slow. But we knew it was going to be slow because
extra long, because
it was extra long. But also, like, before we even went out, I was telling Becky, I was like, everybody's going to come out hot. Let's just sort of like chill on this one.
the CrossFit pacing thing where everybody goes out as fast as possible.
Adam had to hold me back on every single run. He's like, slow down, stop it, slow down.
Was that because you were overheating? You were overworking your engine?
No, the good thing about this one, the first one for Becky and I, was like, this is us just like getting the feel for it. Like we wanted to have fun. Like the other big thing that I wanted with HYROX was I wanted to be able to do something with my wife. Like I wanted to train with her. I wanted to travel with her. I wanted to compete with her. And I hopefully was going to find something that we could continue to do together. So this one is basically like getting our feet wet. Like we weren't really caring about our finish time. we were letting people pass us constantly. I was constantly pulling her back. I was like, we don't have to go fast. We're just sort of getting our feel here. Now, when we go in April in Atlanta, we're going to try and push things a little bit more. But like even building up to the first one, the training for both of us, I feel like was kind of like minimum effective dose. Like, let's just get in and be resilient enough to sort of learn about the race and learn about the community. And then from there, we can try and decide if this is something we want to tackle a little bit more seriously.
You know, I really wish that this was something that Haley and I could do together, but she's gotten so enduring and so good at the running parts of the HYROX. I don't think I could keep up.
You'd have to give her a band to tie around your waist and just yank you
it
around the track.
would need to be a rope run where I'm being dragged at this point.
A group of y'all went out to Dallas to do this. Kyle, you went as like not a coach, but as a...
I went as a coach, supporter, I don't know.
But you got to watch all the heats.
Yes, I got to watch everybody.
Who all went? So it was Adam, Becky was a team.
Adam and Becky were a team. Haley and Tracy, the TTT nutrition coach. So it was basically like most of the TTT nutrition squad was out there.
Yeah.
And then my client Anne Marie, she's a Masters Games athlete who was looking to transition to something that she loved it. So looking to transition to something more enduring, less strength biased, and she went out there and did it with a member from her gym. And one of the things I thought was crazy is that all three teams' time was within a minute.
Yeah. It's for something that takes longer than an hour, like the changes in paces or anything else are very small. Like there's really going to be a tight window. Like I think the overall, what's the individual world record? Like 53 minutes or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you go to like 50th or 100th place and it's like 55, 56 minutes. Like they're really, really tight finish times. And I think a lot of that comes down to there's not much time to be had on the stations themselves, I think, which is why a lot of the CrossFitters, like they think they're going to do that, but then they end up slowing down on the run and everything kind of normalizes its way out to really push as much as you can to the top end of the sport. I feel like it's getting so damn aggressive with those run paces.
We've been working hard to try and convince Ryan Sullivan.
He's signed up.
He's going to do it.
He's signed up.
He's our run guy.
He's our sub. Was he sub 250 now? Sub 250 marathon guy.
He's gotten really good.
He's gotten really good at it. At this
so I was going to ask, if the whole world's starting to do these things, and a lot of them are probably just recreational, if people are thinking about training it, is doing CrossFit like a good way to train it?
No.
I think I think it depends on if you do individual or pairs.
Agreed.
Firstly, because pairs, you run together, but then you split up the work at the station. So that was just, I was telling Adam probably on our third run, it felt like a soccer game. You run hard, you sprint a little bit, you rest, you sprint, you run. Like I grew up doing that. It felt very comfortable to me. But if you do it as an individual, you're doing all of it. It's just constant movement for an hour, 20.
Yeah, I think the training for a HYROX looks so different than training for a cross.
Would you say that CrossFitters are probably better at doing a HYROX?
I think CrossFit. I think here's what I think. I think most, like when I say high level, I'm talking like mid quarterfinals level CrossFitters could just go do a HYROX and complete it and not have any issues completing it. But I don't think that it makes you that doing CrossFit makes you a good HYROX athlete. And I definitely don't think that the best CrossFitters will be anywhere near the best HYROX athletes. They're fundamentally two very different things and require very different, I think, physiological underpinnings. And I think, HYROX is very VO or very threshold oriented, and CrossFit's very VO2 oriented. So like they're going to select for two very different types of athletes. And then the other thing, I think that training for HYROX really comes down to running. How fast can you run and not spill over and run? Like, what is your threshold run pace? Which is part of the reason that I was excited about Ryan choosing to do this, because the guy runs like 6:30 pace for a marathon, right? Like 2.5 hours at 6:30, 2 hours and 40 minutes at 6:30 pace, which is so much faster than like what Haley and Tracy did or what Adam and Becky did in theirs. And so if he can just maintain that, he's going to be really fast at a HYROX. And I think that's what the training for a HYROX comes down to. And I was talking to Adam about this right after their race, because, we're all like, got the buzz from the race. And I was like, I think what this comes down to is you build your threshold as much as possible, almost like you're training for a half marathon. So like your run training looks very half marathon-esque. And then you spend as much time getting as strong as possible with like basic strength work during your off season. So when you're far away from the HYROX race, you build your squats, you build your deadlift, you build that seated cable row that we talked about.
Horizontal pulling, that sled pull.
Because the sled pull it's a beast. And so you spend a lot of time really building that horizontal row, or like the seated cable row, lat pull down, strict weighted pull-ups. Like you just get strong. And then when you're 8 weeks out, then you shift and start to incorporate more of the stuff that's in the HYROX. Now, that's all assuming that you're coming from a CrossFit background. You're already good at burpees. You're pretty good at wall ball and things like that. And those adaptations don't go away if you've done CrossFit for like 6 or 7 years.
Yeah.
So that was training for HYROX in a nutshell.
Yeah. If you're comparing it, I think a CrossFitter would have a better foundation than maybe a different kind of athlete coming into HYROX.
Totally agree.
Yeah. I think that the movements themselves, like it kind of, like we said before, it kind of looks like CrossFit. Like if you didn't know it was called HYROX, you might think that you were walking into that kind of competition, except for just the general chaos of it. Like a new heat every 10 minutes, there was 80 people in our heat.
Yeah.
So,
and not just your heat is running,
Yeah,
but
so-
probably 5 other heats are
so
running
if you're out there
too.
for an hour, that means that the other 5 to 6 heats before you were also out there. So at any given time, you're looking at a couple hundred people out on the course. And that's the thing that went into the running is like, I knew it was going to be real crowded just from some of the videos that I watched, and also just knowing that it went off every 10 minutes. I was like, we aren't going to track our run paces because this little skinny running track is going to be lined shoulder to shoulder with people who are all going their own pace. Some of them might be walking, some of them might be sprinting, some of them might be holding their calf over on the side. And if it's supposed to be 8K, we probably ran a lot more than that just from the bobbing and weaving that has to happen.
And we would pass people on the outside and not try to like zoom around, and we stayed together the whole time. And I think that's one thing that you can't train until you do it, right? You realize how crowded it is, and if you want to go fast, you have to be a little bit more assertive. And then you also realize
That sounds fun though.
I think that's just stuff that I'm thinking like we could definitely
Like when
do
you
that better.
remember the roller skating rinks?
Yeah.
Like my favorite thing to do was go fast as hell and like go through lap traffic.
Yeah, so I think you have to be okay with doing that, and then also the fact that once you come in the in gate, you still have quite a bit of running to do. So you almost can't. I'm when I do my running now, I told Adam I'm running 1200s, not 1Ks, because it's almost like you still have to run quite a bit of distance before you get to the station.
I do think it's something that as you get more comfortable with the sport, you get more comfortable with saying on your left. Whereas the first time through, it's like, I don't really care too much. Like I'm going to wait until we get to a wider part, and then we'll go around on the outside and we'll kind of take our time with it. We were out there, and then the female pro individuals came out like maybe 3 heats after, because we were about
like
halfway in.
Yeah.
We were running, and then these maybe like 4 or 5 girls whipped past us like they were pissed at us, but like they were yelling on her, like they were nice about it, but they were going so damn fast. It blew my mind. I was like, do they know that they got to do this for an hour? And then lap after lap, they just kept going. I was like, man, that's so impressive.
Are there like legit like little like mini celebs? Is this thing like cooking?
Yes, they have
where they have like
sponsored kind of athletes.
podcasts, and they have like like reality shows. Like, are they cooking yet?
I don't know if they got the reality
I don't know
shows
about
yet, but they
that.
definitely
Or,
got.
like I don't mean like a legit reality show, but like someone on YouTube.
There's starting to be camps.
Is it like us back in 2014?
Yes,
Yeah,
100%.
There's some famous people in the world, and I think
Who's the most famous HYROXer? And what the hell is
there's
HYROX?
a girl
Where's
that
name?
I-
It sounds like a bleach.
Yeah, I don't know. The 2
Hunter.
girls that I follow
Hunter.
are Megan Jacoby and Lauren Weeks. They're kind of like in a battle for like world champion. I follow those 2 on Instagram.
Do you remember Hunter McIntyre? He's the guy who got the wild card
Yeah,
invite
I know
for the
Hunter.
2019
He's big,
games.
yeah.
He's a big deal in HYROX. At
Yeah.
one point was the world
the
record.
champ?
At one point was the world record.
He didn't win the world championships last year. I think he won in 23.
Yeah, I think he took 3rd last year.
Yeah.
But he's really good. He's like the man in there. And then
I think he's the big personality in the sport.
Yeah, for sure.
He is a personality. I love that.
That is
guy.
for sure.
All right. So, anything else about y'all's experience in Dallas? Like,
So I was on the spectator side, and I have to admit that going into it, I had just coached Haley and Tracy doing their half marathon, like, I don't know, 8 months before that. And watching and spectating a long running race is not the most exciting thing in the world. It's like, hey, there they are. And then you don't see them again for, 30 minutes or something like that. And you're like, oh, I think that's that. No, that's not them. And that's the running, spectating.
Is there a lot of spectators?
There were a lot of spectators, and the spectating game here was very different, where you were basically like an active participant in spectating the entire time. So
what does that
basically
mean?
You would get so close to.
Yeah, you would start and you would watch the start of the race, and then you'd have to walk all the way to the other side where the first station was, where the ski ergs were. And by the time you got there, the people that you wanted to watch were coming in, were filing in and getting to their ski erg, and you could literally stand from like me to Adam away and cheer for them, coach them, whatever you wanted to do. And like you're like in the action. Then as soon as they take off, you've got 5 minutes. You walk, you go around, you go to the sled push station. See, I've got it. Go to the sled push station, and they're right in front of you again, like literally just, 2 feet in front of you pushing the sled. And then it's to the next one, to the sled pull. And it's just like that over and over and over, where, you maybe don't see them for a few minutes. And so if you're spectating with somebody, you just chat with them while you're walking, and then you show up to the next station, and boom, the people you're watching are again going. And
yeah, I feel like you and Danny became good friends because of just the 1 or 2 minutes of waiting. I had a buddy who was there from college. She was doing the male open race, and so he was there watching Becky and I with Kyle, and they just kind of like tracked us around from station to station, and we'd get there and we could hear I could hear your guys' conversation while we were doing our stations. It was so close.
Yeah.
Did they have a sick vendor village? And
the vendor village is developing. I'd say it was the same level of vendor village as like the Masters CrossFit games this past year.
But what was different about that was I don't know. I mean, Becky might know better than I. It wasn't like third-party vendors. It was their stuff.
All their stuff.
Yeah,
it was their That's what I'm saying.
Do they have a sponsor, or is it all just
Puma?
Yeah, Puma is the sponsor. Puma shoes, and then they may have another couple.
Puma's the brand because the clan makes troops.
What?
You don't know that Eminem line? All right, next.
No, sir.
Moving on.
And then they have their own equipment sponsor too. You can buy equipment.
Yeah, we could have gotten the kettlebells or the sandbags. Those were for sale there.
Which I don't think would be necessary.
No, the carpet. We need to find.
That's the biggest thing. Is like
sled.
Kyle and I right before were talking about how like what does training look like? Like how much do you really need to be doing HYROX versus like just running and accumulating a little bit of strength volume for lower body and upper body? And I was like, man, the one thing that's super, super HYROX specific that I wish we could replicate better was those sleds. And it's not just because that pull sled stole my lunch money. It's because
I didn't help you.
It's just really, really hard to, because they have weights for each division, right? Like there's a weight for women's open, women's pro, men's open, men's pro, mixed doubles, relay. Like there's different weights that go on all the sleds. And it's really hard for us to say, all right, with this amount of friction on this surface, with this kind of sled, what's the weight that I should be at? And we were just guessing.
I didn't even do sled stuff because I didn't know what it would feel like, and I didn't want to do that. I just ran, and now that it's like I load it to the feel of the race. Like this is what it felt.
Which was heavier than you expected, right?
It was way heavy. I mean, our mixed pair weight is the men's weights for everything.
For not the men's pro, the men's
open.
Men's open, yeah. So
it's so interesting because you guys got done and you were like the sleds were the hard part, right? Both sleds. Haley and Tracy said that Haley said specifically the sleds were easy, that the sleds were a joke, and that the hard part was like not dying, not dying. Like
they were also probably pushing their run pace a little bit more than we were. Yeah. So the whole time they were kind of like,
and push the one of the things I said after watching you guys was like, hey, push the transition after you finish a station out to the next run. And so they pushed that part hard. And I think that hurts pretty bad.
Yeah.
So they said different parts, but watching everybody go through, the burpee broad jumps for the average participant looked absolutely brutal. I've never seen so many people stopped either. When I say crawling a burpee, I legit mean like crawling a burpee, unlike you've seen in any CrossFit gym. Like
unless you see Mike do them.
I've seen Mike do some grief burpees. That's
but
true.
Mike does them on purpose. I feel like they're faster him when he does it.
Yeah, but it's like it's that taken to the max, and there were so many people just stopped. They would be like halfway down the first lap and just stopped in the middle of the burpee station. And then people are behind them, and there's a lot of logistical stuff, but they have that sorted out pretty well.
Yeah,
as well. But the burpees look like the thing that crushed most people. And then I watched you guys go, and I was watching Adam just fly through the burpee broad jump, and I was like, oh, I get it now. Those are hard for people that don't have CrossFit experience. But if you're a CrossFitter and have spent time building your burpee mechanics and your burpee efficiency, the burpee broad jump is just another station that's like it's it's in your way from getting to the next one.
Yeah, and it's like at that point in the race, you're tired, and it's not that your pressing muscles are fatigued. You haven't done any of this yet, but it's just, I think CrossFitters can breathe while they burpee, you know, and like it's just go back down to the floor, right? That's what we tell our athletes, hands to the floor. That's all you think about. But when you're breathing and you're tired, and it's just very easy to just like not want to do
lay
it.
there. I've done that in CrossFit workouts before.
I was also pissed off at that station because we had just finished the sled pull. I was like, I need to pass some people now.
The one that I thought was kind of a waste, maybe that's not the right word for it, was the farmer's carry.
That one is kind of weird.
My perspective was that was just kind of like in the way.
I feel like there's zero separation in that.
No.
Like for any, like it's
people sprint those.
Yeah, I think next time when we do those, like I'm just gonna grab them and carry them the whole distance, and just basically like it's gonna be a continuous run.
Yeah,
like
you're gonna run.
Yeah,
through
we're gonna do the row. We're gonna do that. What is that? That's the 6th 1K. Yeah, the 6th 1K. Farmer carry 7th 1K. Like that's just one big station now.
If you could replace that station with anything, what would you guys replace it with?
That's a good question.
Yeah, I don't know.
I do.
I would say like a
30 power cleans at 225.
You would.
I was gonna say I would want to go back and like to the point before about when they were thinking about the movement selection, what's still going to sort of scratch that itch of like not having a huge barrier to entry, which maybe 30 power cleans at 225 might do it. Probably not a huge skill deficit in terms of like gymnastics or anything else. But I do feel like just looking at the whole thing, the farmer carry was just kind of like you guys needed an 8th station that was low skill, that wasn't super intimidating, but like just not real room for.
I'm glad it wasn't.
You can't really make a move there.
It's such a short amount of time.
What is it, like 90 seconds?
Yeah, ours was, I think we did it in like 1:32, and I think the fastest was maybe 1:20. I don't know, but the number of people in between us, it was insane how.
Yeah, but they're all right there.
Yeah.
So every other non-run station's like 4 minutes. And so it's really weird, or like 3.5 minutes to 4 minutes. It's really weird that they have one that's half that time.
Yeah.
And I think perceptually watching everybody, it looked easy.
Yeah.
There was nobody that I watched on the day that got bottlenecked on that station. So I do think that they could potentially, unless their intention is for that to be a recovery station before people get to the lunges, which
either that or it's like, hey, you got to get back to that run again sooner than the other ones and see how you do that.
And it's
I will say that the worst combination of the whole thing was lunge, run, wall ball. So maybe they're preparing you for that.
It may be the rest station.
Well, it's weird to run after a farmer's carry.
It was
weird. Well, ours were 53 pounds, right? So it wasn't. I mean, it's not heavy for a CrossFit girl, but it was heavy for me because I don't really do a lot of strength training. So I finished the farmer's carry, but then you're trying to run and like your arms
shaking
are
out your arms.
Do you think that there's a case for them to maybe adjust this wall ball thing if it is becoming like the one thing in their race that is potentially sketchy?
Yeah, I wonder about the incentive behind it. Like if they're really, really trying to push to make this more of a professional top-end sport where they can get people who are professional athletes with sponsors who are racing each other and they're increasing their prize purse at the top of the sport, then I think the standards are going to matter a little bit more. But if they're going into this with the goal of we want as many people as possible to not be intimidated by our race, to not have to worry about no reps in the middle of this, to not have to worry about getting down to depth on a squat, which can be kind of subjective at some point, they might not have incentive to change it.
Yeah. I mean, you could have both, right? Kind of like you could have quick play and ranked arena.
Well, because right now, like, what's the prize purse at World Championships?
Oh, 25,000.
It's not
maybe.
much, right? It's not much. Yeah. And I kind of wonder about that because if you're looking at a couple 100,000 people signing up year by year, the cost of it was much higher than open registration. Like Becky and I think paid $300 for both of us. And so
total.
The money that they're bringing in from registration is higher. The money that they're bringing in from sponsors is probably a little bit lower. But I was kind of like curious about, man, I would have expected at the top end of this race, if you've been around for 6 or 7 years, that these guys are going to be making a little bit more from prize purse. I hope that they're making some from sponsors, but I would have thought of this more from prize purse. And then from there, I was thinking, man, I wonder if that's kind of by design, if they're putting that money back into the development of the sport and the marketing of it to appeal to a different demographic where it's like, hey, come and do this. It's low skill barrier to entry. It's going to give you some motivation to be able to train regularly at a sport that you can then compare to yourself year by year and race by race. And, you know, we say that there's standards on wall balls. They're not really respected. And we're okay with that.
But I think the solution, like Chris was saying, could be that the open division is not judged. It's counted or cheered for, like you guys were saying. And then the pro division is basically judged.
Yeah.
That would be
And
a good,
I
I think that's a simple fix, I think.
Yeah, and that's a solution that we wish would happen with like the CrossFit Open.
And again, I think
to have different divisions.
I think it depends on the race that you do too. Because I have seen two ways that they judge wall balls. One, I've seen actual like electronic targets where you have to literally hit the center of it or it doesn't count. I've seen them in races working and counting. And then I think I've seen somebody had a strap on their leg that was able to judge depth of your squat. But they're not going to do that at a Dallas race where there's 6,000 people and nobody makes money to win, but maybe higher levels as you go, like that's how they judge it.
Well, and Adam brought up such a good point that it's most likely what they're doing right now is just reinvesting the money that they're making, because they are making a lot. This competition makes a lot more money than the CrossFit Games, just from its actual revenues. So if you think about how they're going to have more people this year potentially participate in HYROX than the Open, and the Open's $20 to register for, and this is $300 to register for. Do the math.
Yeah.
Right. If they're reinvesting, now granted, they have logistics that are incorporated, and the overhead for the Open is way lower, but the Open is just one stage of the whole thing. So I think if you look at this as like a roving competition, I think they could potentially just be reinvesting for now until they hit, we call it critical mass, but we're already in this like competitive fitness space. And so we're aware of it because it's competitive fitness.
Yeah. And when I say about the different prioritization by, in terms of the demographic that they're trying to target, I don't want to defend the wall balls because that is gross to me. I don't like the idea of you saying like writing in your rule book that there is a standard on these and then it not being upheld. I don't like that at all. But anytime I see something like that, where it's kind of like, this is blatantly obvious that this is a rule that everybody's ignoring, I just want to think about why it's being ignored. Like what's the purpose behind this? And that to me is what makes sense a little bit more, at least, is like they're not really interested too much in the top end of the sport yet. Maybe that's the exciting part. Maybe what's going to bring people in. But I think what they care a little bit more about is trying to be as appealing and as accessible as possible.
Well, it obviously worked because you guys are signed up to do another one. I decided while I was there that I was like, I told Adam, I was like, I want to do the next one. So I'm doing the one in Atlanta. But I said I need a partner that is also competitive, but at my level.
I think we both knew who it was going to be.
Exactly. It's McGoldrick, obviously.
So I can see a lot of CrossFitters, like, again, these things aren't at odds. You could do both. They could be fun for their own reasons. They don't it doesn't have to be one or the other. I can see them signing up maybe once a year just as a fun thing to do. Where I do see as a CrossFitter that it could be different is if you did want to take HYROX seriously and train for it, that kind of training where you're just locked in on a certain thing might not be the most fun for a CrossFitter unless you are just completely bought into doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've heard so many people say that, and they're all CrossFitters. It's like, oh, you just do the same thing over and over. That's going to be so boring.
I love that.
It's boring because you're comparing it to a sport that changes all the time. Like, of course, everything's going to be boring. But picture any other sport that came around before CrossFit.
Cross-country running.
Guys, let's also be realistic that the people that are competing in CrossFit are doing repetitive training. Like every athlete, every high-level athlete that we coach is on linear strength progressions and linear endurance progressions. And like, yes, there's variance in like the Metcon component of their training every day, but that's like this tiny little piece of like 5 to 7 pieces of training that are all linear or periodized in some sense. Yeah. So it's like, it's almost like a null argument for the CrossFit athletes. Now, for people that just go to the gym and train,
there's movement selection. It's like you kind of whittle down to these target movements.
Yeah,
so I mean, you can say the same with CrossFit. They just have more.
Yeah.
But what I was like, I think the point that I ended up coming back to is like a lot of the conversations that I have with people who look at HYROX and like, oh, it's the same thing. Ugh, why would you want to do that? They're all CrossFitters. And like, it made sense to me that I'm having this conversation with just CrossFitters. But like, if I was to go to my neighbor, Eric, and be like, man, look at this race. He's like, oh, that's pretty cool. I can train all of these different things. Like there's all these movements associated with it. So if you take this conversation as somebody who's not a CrossFitter, who's not used to constantly varying all the movements and having all of these different things that they have to be ready for, HYROX is kind of exciting. Like it's not monotonous. It's not something that has to be bland and dull and doing the same thing every day. It's actually something that can be exciting to have data points that are repeatable. It can be a sport that you can like grow year by year and continue to develop. So I think there's lots of really, really good things about HYROX that lend itself to being a good sport that would exist. Like even, yeah, like you were saying, like Becky cross country or like other endurance, like Becky's in our garage, 20 hours a week, just sitting there rowing. And I sit there and watch her row. I'm like, how are you still sitting on that damn thing? Like it's been 3 hours. How are you still sitting on that thing? But she does it because she likes it. And like she says, she can see improvement in it. And I think there's a ton of value in that for me, I've been associated with CrossFit since 2008. And I just like the idea of having something that is standardized. That's the same that I can know and expect and like.
Yeah. The data.
Just
I
to have
love
known.
the data. My little nerdy heart loved it.
And the data is so applicable and usable because you can look at it and you can analyze it very quickly.
You can see everybody else's time.
Yes,
too.
very quickly. You can say, okay, we got to get, here's our problem. We have to get better at the runs. And then if you approach it from, the perspective that we always take when we're coaching people, I look at the run and I'm like, well, you have to get faster. You have to get more endurance. Like then you can just start to plug them into the coaching systems that you already have. Yeah. And I think
that was the next thing I was going to ask. So I know like Brandon is putting together, did you work with him on this, Kyle? He's putting together a TTT Compete.
The HYROX program that Brandon is putting together was based on the HYROX program that I created for Haley and Tracy to get into their first HYROX. And so it was like, that was our model that we used for prepping someone for their first HYROX. 'Cause they crushed it. They were like,
they did awesome.
Hour and 14 minutes and absolutely smashed that. And we were like, well, this is a really good base for building a HYROX model from. And it really is. It's exactly what I was just talking about. It starts out very early on where you're doing mostly running. It's kind of modeled off of a half marathon progression where like there's always a long run progression and things like that, but there's a lot of, heavy strength work built in there, which afterward I was like, wow, that was a good decision. I had to like pat myself on the back. I was like, man, that was a good decision to get them strong because they passed literally everybody, at least in their heat, and the majority of the people in the entire race on both sleds.
Yeah.
Everybody
They flew on those sleds.
And it was like the easiest thing for you to do to create separation, to borrow Brandon's terms, early on in a HYROX program is to get stronger than everybody else while you're getting better at running.
So they could push the sleds and still be able to trust themselves on the run afterwards because of the intensity of the sleds.
Yeah, I'm so excited to keep coaching people in HYROX. I think
I've had a couple athletes who did one and like want to do it. And it's not that we just do HYROX stuff every day. I still have them power clean and I still have them do some CrossFit-y things. I think the cool thing about HYROX is you don't have to completely do HYROX every single day. You can run, you can do some CrossFit, and then the stuff that you're weak at in HYROX is what you focus on. Whereas with CrossFit, it's kind of like you don't have a choice. You have to do everything that CrossFit requires and you have to do it all the time because who knows what you're going to have to do when you're tested.
I agree with
Which
that.
is amazing for what it is, just different.
Yes,
But
100%.
What? Oh, man, I just lost my train of thought.
You got it.
No, I don't.
Get there.
Tough grenade.
The other really cool thing, again, user experience that I thought was so awesome. Well, the one
Is it the girl in the tent?
Oh yeah, you should talk about
That's
that.
You
user
talk about
experience.
yours. You talk about yours.
Oh, I
first.
remember
No,
what I was
do
going to
the
ask
girl in
now.
the tent.
Oh, ask your question.
No, girl in the
I
tent.
won't forget.
Then
Oh,
I'll
okay.
come back.
Man, we need to find her name.
Aside from competing with Adam, because I always love to do that, but you warm up and then you go in your corral 10 minutes before your race starts, and there's this hype girl in there, and she does it for every single heat, right? She's there from 7 till 10, and it's the same speech. And I might get emotional talking about it right now, but she gives such good energy and she gets you pumped up and she kind of reminds you like you're all in this together and like you're just here to have a good time. And she has you say this and repeat it and say this and repeat it and like close your eyes. And that was just such a great experience. I was like, that was worth it right there to have her talk to us and just get us like in the right mindset. And like, this is why you're here. And she was like, kiss your partner. And I was like, oh, I'm ready. Like, let's go.
Wait, kiss your partner.
Because we were together.
That's part of HYROX.
All right, I'm out.
Oh shit, I'm with
You
Mike.
and Mike.
Yeah. So yeah, it was just that I thought was so great that they take that time just
Is
to
she
like
at all
talk
of
to
them,
you.
or that's just the
She was
person
at
you
that
at
one
Dallas.
all day. I don't know if she's at
Yeah,
all
I don't know
of
if she's
them.
at all
But
of them.
I appreciated her
I think
so
that there
much.
are going to be weekends where they have multiple in different locations. So
Yeah.
she can't be everywhere, but she should be everywhere because she was awesome.
so good. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was
My
so
question
nervous.
was going to be, how long did you say this takes on average?
It took us for an hour and 14.
Hour 14.
I saw some scores up there in the over 2 hour mark. If you're really good, it's about an hour or less.
Well, if you
And
can
that was
get
for the partner one.
indies too. I
Indies
think
too,
good
yeah.
good indies. I think the best scores are like
sub-hour.
53, 55 or like the world class scores. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think.
Do you think we'll get to the point where there, like there's those crazy people out there who do like a Murph a day?
Oh,
Do you think people will do a HYROX a day?
Dude.
Sure.
Yeah, for sure. Let's do it
It's-
this summer. No, I'm kidding. Like Ruck Challenge last or 2 years ago.
All right. Well, I've really got to pee. Do y'all have any final thoughts on all this?
Well, I'd want to know if you walk out the door right now, could you tell somebody what HYROX is?
What is it?
All right. You run
How far?
1K
Good.
Yeah.
and then you do something and then you
Oh.
run and then you do something.
Yeah.
Do you know what the
Yeah.
somethings
There's
are at
burpees.
least?
Don't
Okay.
worry
that's right.
about the
Burpee broad
somethings.
jumps,
Yep.
wall balls, a sled push,
Good.
Yep.
a sled pull,
Good.
lunges.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
How many more?
Three
Might have
more.
said
Three
that.
more.
3 more.
Don't forget the ergs.
Oh,
Yeah, there's-
well, farmer's carry,
Good.
ski erg,
Good.
row.
Good.
That's it.
You did it.
Oh,
of it.
dang.
Yeah.
But I don't know the order.
Don't even worry about
The
it. I didn't know
order is
I
hard,
didn't know the
yeah.
order until an hour before we started.
Nice.
I had Haley write the order on her arm before she went out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I was-
Haley was very nervous.
I was so
she
nervous
kept going
about
back
it.
to the lap thing. Like they tell you, you go out, you're going to pass the in thing, you pass it again, and then the third time you go in. And she's like, is it the third time? And I was like, when you see it the third time, you go in.
But once she got out there, she was like,
Once
it was
you
so
do it,
obvious.
then you're fine. Yeah.
It was so obvious.
I do want to, I've said this in a podcast before when we brought up HYROX on a whim, but pro tip to any of the moms and dads out there who have a girl or a daughter in the Girl Scouts, when it's cookie time, find a HYROX and just sit in that parking lot and make your money, boo-boo.
Go to the registration time. Yeah.
Did you guys get the feel that it felt a little bit like early like 2010, 2011 CrossFit competitions where like you're in the registration line and everybody was so hyped to be there and they like have their patches on there and like everybody was so excited.
Oh, do they do like Spartan Race where you get like
You get a
collect them
patch?
all
Yep.
type
You know
of
what
thing?
else I thought was
I
cool?
love that.
They have photographers there, and
That's what I was
they'll
going to
send
say.
you they'll send you a link and you can look at the photos, but then you take a photo of yourself and
It's
it
called a
finds
selfie.
you take a selfie and AI will find your face in all of the photos throughout the whole event.
And then you pay a fee.
you
and
can buy them if
Yeah.
you want to. Yeah.
kind of like a 5K or
Yeah.
I've seen it done at those.
Yep.
And it's usually some sketchy photo of you looking half drunk.
So Chris, are you going to do a HYROX? Because you were so good at that ruck challenge. I feel like you could prep yourself for a HYROX pretty well.
I could be talked into it.
Nice,
Ooh.
nice. How many people do we have doing the Atlanta one?
I
At
know
least 50. A lot.
at least
Swear.
50.
I swear. A
Like,
lot.
have you seen this list?
There's
I would have
there's-
said 25 to 30.
There's 15,
That's what I was gonna
there's
say.
15 on-site gym members. That doesn't even include any of us.
Like
from
half
train
the coaching
things.
staff is doing
Yeah.
it.
Yeah,
I think
everyone
there's
but Chris.
easily 25.
Well,
from
he's going
TTT.
to.
No, not
Kyle,
that
what-
Chris.
Oh.
That Chris.
Oh yeah, well he's we'll get him there.
When does that program you and Brandon do post? Is it up?
No, it's not up yet.
Is it enough time? When's the Atlanta one?
It's
End
April,
of
so it's
April.
And how long is
it's
that
16
progression?
weeks. The progression should be 12 weeks. The one thing I will say is I don't think you should like be training specifically for a HYROX, doing HYROX training for more than like 12 weeks, or you're going to burn yourself out. I think most of your training in the off season should be like, if you're a CrossFitter, train for your CrossFit, obviously. But if you like want to compete in HYROXs, your off season is like a hybrid training model where you're like run one day, lift one day, run one day, lift one day, run one day, lift one
Well,
day.
and like the first race is such a big learning experience. I think you can't have any expectations. And then once you do it and you say, oh, like we learned about the run. Oh, okay, you got to be a little bit more assertive. Or, oh, this station, I can just sprint through it. And then you can focus it on like, I need to push a sled more and pull a sled more and that kind of thing.
yeah.
So run that program 12 weeks out.
Yeah, I think it'll start. We'll have it start right when you should be starting.
And if you are partner people, should you train with your partner, or is like,
I think so. Well, you
Yeah.
guys could probably speak to that more.
We have different strengths and weaknesses. So when we did it the first time, I just thought I just need to be able to keep up with him in the run. he needs to handle the sled stuff because I'm not strong enough, but the rest we kind of just split up. But we did do a run through, like a practice, because you could, how do you transition? How many burpees do you want to do? When do you slow down on the lunges? So I think it's good to practice simulations.
Yeah,
with
I think for the majority of the training, you don't need to be with your partner though, because it's not like a CrossFit partner team comp where you have to practice your synchro and practice your communication. It's basically like you guys are right next to each other the whole time. You can be talking, you can change the reps, change the movements whenever you want to. You need to have, I would say, at least probably 2 good run throughs. We did a partial run through where we did the full workout stations and half of the runs. So we did 500 meter runs just to get a feel for when we would be transitioning on the workout stations. Yeah. And I feel like that was exactly what it needed to be.
I had Haley and Tracy train together on Fridays. When they trained together on Fridays, it was always a HYROX style workout. And then they did 3 run throughs. We did, the first one was a half HYROX. Then we got up to a 3/4 HYROX, and then maybe a week out or maybe a week and a half out. You and I talked about this, had them run through a half HYROX. Just to go through it as much as possible.
Something about a half HYROX.
I think that would be the ideal
half
distance
rocks,
for me, to be honest. The other thing, we talked about the relay, but the relay thing I think sounds really cool. It'd basically be like, there'd be 4, let's say it's the 4 of us, and it's like 3, 2, 1, go. I do the first run and the ski, and I tag Adam, and Adam does the second run and the sled, and he tags Becky, and Becky, well, you would do the row, obviously. But, we each tag, and each of us do one part, and then when you get, so like everybody, you have all this rest. So like I would go, and then I would rest while you go, Chris goes, and Becky goes, and then you tag me again, and I go do another one. That is my ideal.
Everybody does 2 stations,
yes.
But you get rest.
And I don't
in
even think you could do 2 in a row, I think.
Oh, no. No one wants to do 2
you know what I mean? I think you pick your strengths, and when you want to
Yeah.
rest, I don't think it has to be in any order.
Yeah.
The partners
Man,
go.
it would hurt a lot more. You basically sprint a station.
Yeah, I'd
It'd
take
be
a
fun,
sled.
though.
I think I'd be good at that one.
All right. Well, I guess we'll reconvene in April after y'all do it again and see if you still
Yeah, we're going to
like
have
it.
a lot more people on this podcast.
Yeah. Should we fill up the whole room?
25 people all talking about their experience.
We need some bleachers.
I've had to pee for 30 minutes. It has been great having you guys. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time.